Hello everybody and welcome back to Comet Sighted. Today we're going to be talking about the Dev Diary from the 3rd of December, and I promise you, I've got the one after this recorded, and after this one and that one go live, we should be right back up on time, finally, with these, if you're watching them as they go live. But today we're going to be talking about POPs, POP movement, uncolonized land, and military traditions in the area around the Levant. As you may recall from previous Dev Diaries, POPs in Imperator are the base unit that we use to represent populations. Each POP will have its own type, its own culture, and its own religion. How they feel about the country that rules them will largely depend on both local conditions and on how closely their culture and religions are aligned. Former is that certain POP types will be happier if they have access to certain trade goods in that province. An example of a more national level factor that impacts population happiness is the culture and religion. POPs that share your own religion and culture will generally be easier to manage than those of others, though this may of course be modified by many things such as ideas and laws. POPs exist throughout the cities of all countries on the map, and in some regions there might be quite mixed populations. Carthaginian Sicily, for instance, has a large Carthaginian upper class, while the freemen, slaves, and tribesmen are generally more mixed with local Sicilian and Greek cultures. In this graphic, you can see it's a pretty easy breakdown of culture and religions for the POPs in one of the cities. I wanted to say provinces, one of the cities in Magna Graecia. POP movement. POPs can move between cities as a result of scripted content such as events. Examples can be natural disaster, tribal groups feuding, and migrations, as well as when a city falls and some of its population is enslaved. But the era of Imperator is one where the government intervened quite a bit in population movement, with Hellenic kings founding great cities in their own name, such as Seleucia Magna, Antiochia, Lysimachia, and Ptolemais. Standard way to operate in many of these cases was to force the local population of nearby cities to move into one designated, newly prepared location. Some would also be brought in from further afar, not in the least the Romans themselves, founding colonies first in Italy, then later all over their growing empire. Much like the kings of the area, most of the time, if you want a certain POP to be transferred to a specific place within your empire, you will need to move it yourself. A POP can be moved from one city to either an adjacent city, one adjacent across the sea zone, or any other owned city in the same province for a power cost of 20 civic power. Now that is interesting, because I just kind of assumed to be able to move them anywhere in your empire, but it has to be adjacent in a sea zone, or in the same province. That's cool. Slaves are cheaper than other POPs to move and only cost 5 civic power to transfer, since the number of slaves in a city also decides if it can produce more than one surplus of its trade good. This means that you can more easily set up production centers for certain goods, whereas you will have to pay more power if you want to build a metropolis away. Civilization value. Now, this might not be familiar to a lot of Paradox players, but it would be familiar to someone who's played EU Rome. As mentioned in an earlier development diary, civilization value is a rating that exists in all locations on the map, and it represents the level of infrastructure and urbanization in that location. As mentioned briefly in an earlier development diary, this is a big factor for POP happiness. Tribesmen will be happier in cities with low civilization. That was me just accidentally whacking a knuckle on the desk. With low civilization value, whereas more stratified POP types such as freemen and especially citizens prefer to live with high civilization value. Your country will also have a national civilization value of its own, mainly increased by government type and technology. All owned cities will slowly gravitate towards the value towards that value if it is below it, and slightly more quickly towards it if it is above it. Positive civilization growth can also never push the local value above that of your nation, so it has a tendency to drift towards your national level. And here we have a absolutely beautiful map. I gotta say, it's just visually appealing to look at, of all of the, you could very clearly see all the passes, all the mountain ranges, and the civilization value in a lot of areas. Like, you can see it very clearly higher in Rome and along the coastline of Greece and kind of along the Black Sea, where it's much lower kind of in the hinterlands. Oh no, I'm sorry. That is population map mode. Well, most of that stays the same. You could clearly see the population, not the civilization value. My bad. I just assumed because I'm completely mixing myself up here. Let's move on. From the interior of Sardinia to central Germany and Ireland, there is a lot of land that is uncolonized and seemingly empty on the political view. As long as you have an adjacent city of at least 10 pops, you can send one of these pops into an uncolonized location, and this pop will claim it for their home country at the same cost as one you pay for moving pops inside your own lands. That's not too bad. This will turn the uncolonized location into a city under your control, but it will not change the culture, religion, or type of any pre-existing pops. So it's a very interesting way to spread, because you could very specifically tell who to go there. If you are a country with a high civilization level, and the local civilization rating will start to climb towards your country value, so it'll gravitate up towards you, making it more suitable for your freemen and citizens. But most likely making the original population of tribesmen quite unhappy. Potential ways to counter this is to spend power to convert them to another type or adopt the governor policy for civilization effort, which changes the type of your tribesmen over time. Oh, so they would just kind of convert from tribesmen into, I wouldn't say slaves, but that's the next strata up. No, that would maybe to freemen. Maybe to citizens. I don't know. I guess we'll have to see. There is also other ways to resettle people or to colonize new land. For instance, using your army to create military colonies or tribal migrations. But that is something we will get into in greater detail in later Dev Diaries. That is something that has been spoken of briefly. There are military traditions which will allow you to sack enemy cities and carry their pops off with you. And then, of course, you can put them down somewhere or just put them into the slave market and have them manufacturing goods for you. For your grand trade empire of the Republic. All right, so that's it for the content in terms of mechanics we're talking about, but now we're going to be looking at northern Syria here and other nearby locations. In 304 BCE, Syria, much like Anatolia, was in the hands of Antigonus, represented by Phrygia in Imperator. Syria was, you'll have to forgive me for pronunciations again, I do apologize. Syria was quite a fertile and well-populated region, one of the central Hellenistic regions. Syria has, is that a typo? Syria has a considerable Greek minority population after the campaigns and projects of Alexander the Great, as well as the successors that came after him. At our start date, Antigonus himself would have been in his namesake capital, the growing city of Antigonia, preparing for new pan-Hellenistic games that he hoped would help to impress on the world the importance of his new dynasty and capital. After the fall of Mesopotamia and Persia to Seleucus, I never know if that's a hard C or a soft C. I think it's Seleucus. My natural inclination is pronounce it Seleucus, because that's what I've been doing in my head for ages, but I think it's Seleucus. This capital is now much closer to the border with the Seleucid Empire, because that sounds right to me, than perhaps had originally been envisioned, and indeed in real life the city would eventually fall to the Seleucids and fall from glory, though the later Seleucid metropolis, Anatolia, let's go with that, would be founded close by. Less concerned with the freedom of non-Greek cities, this region is not home to any subject city leagues like Anatolia and Greece, but a number of old states that once capitulated to Alexander remain and retain some level of autonomy in Phoenicia and northern Syria. Now that, I think, is interesting because areas we've looked at before have very heavily been like, this guy's in charge and all these guys look up to him or suck up to him. Commagene, small local tributary of Phrygia, oh, we're back to that, in the upper Mesopotamian region conquered long ago by Alexander. Commagene is not central enough to warrant direct control by the bigger overlords. This time, in time, this would be the site of the later kingdom of Commagene. Bambais, small state located around the cult of the Canaanite deity Atargatis. The state predates Macedonian conquest, but was sworn fealty first to Alexander, then to his successors. The theocratic monarchy is ruled by the hereditary high priest of Bambais. Phoenicia and Upper Syria. While the Phoenician merchants are still a significant force in the Mediterranean, especially in and around Carthage, Phoenicia itself has been under foreign rule for a long time in 304 BCE. The great forests of Lebanon remain a prime source of wood for ships, however, and it has been the goal of Egyptian expansion plans for more than once for the largely wooden deprived kingdom. A number of small Phoenician city kingdoms remain here since days past, having sworn fealty first to the Achaemenids and later to Alexander and then Antigonus. The fortified city of Tyre itself, associated with the production of the fabled Tyrian purple, remains under the direct administration of the Frisian army and has been the site of many famous sieges in the past. This is also the region in which the huge Antigonid fleet of Demetrius was built before it was set out to invade Greece and destroyed the Ptolemaic navy off the coast of Cyprus. Starting countries. Arados, small Phoenician city kingdom under Antigonid protection. At the start of the game, Arados is a tributary of Phrygia. Byblos, ancient Phoenician city kingdom on the coast below the Lebanese mountains. Byblos has been populated for thousands of years, but is by now, like the other kingdoms, but a satellite of the greater Antigonid realm. At the start of the game, Byblos is a tributary of Phrygia. Sidon. Historically one of the most important Phoenician city-states, Sidon is now just one of a few remaining kingdoms on the Lebanese coastline. Awarded great autonomy, Sidon would come to embrace Hellenic culture. At the start of the game, Sidon is a tributary of Phrygia. Judea and Nabatea. The southern Levant is on the doorstep of Egypt and has come to be the site of repeated conflicts between the Ptolemies there and other successors, but it has not generally been the price fought over. The current Antigonid control of the region has left much of the inland in the hands of the high priests of Judea and Samaria, contenting itself with control over major ports and fortifications along the coastline. Before earning the nickname the Besieger, Demetrius fought his first battle in this region just outside the Hellenistic trade port of Gaza, a scathing defeat that did not speak well of his future prospects as one of the other Diadochi. While left alone politically, the Jewish states were not unaffected by the influence of the Hellenistic states. Even here, Hellenistic influence has penetrated the culture and religious world of Judea and Samaria, something that would in time lead to theological as well as political conflict. And our starting country, Samaria, a small Hebrew theocratic kingdom ruled by the hereditary high priest of Sakhem and paying tribute to the Antigonid Empire. Samaria also has a growing minority of Greek origin, but as yet is mostly left to their own devices. This may well change if the borders of the great successor empire should stabilize in the future, however. At start, Samaria is a tributary of Phrygia. Judea. Judea is ruled by hereditary high priest at the start of the game that is Simon the First, by some identified as the legendary Simon the Just. Just like Samaria to the north, the only direct influence of the successor kingdoms on Judea at the start of the game is culture rather than political. The Antigonids are happy to leave the local high priest in charge in exchange for regular tribute. At the start of the game, Judea is a tributary of Phrygia. Nabatea, a small Arabic trading kingdom, I like the sound of that, controls most of the land between Judea and the Red Sea and lives to a large degree on the frankincense trade between Arabia and the Mediterranean. At the start of the game, Nabatea is independent and unaligned. I like the idea of an independent trade-based nation. All the above, along with any Arabic, native Egyptian, and Levantine powers, will have access to the Levantine and Arabic military traditions, which we'll talk about right now. The Levantine and Arabian traditions will allow countries that have them to excel at desert warfare, but also give a few significant bonuses to Phoenician and Arabian navies in tribute to Phoenician and Arabian sailors. Since this is a region with significant Hellenistic influence, you can also to some extent embrace the martial ideas of the Hellenic kingdoms. Starting attrition, Pathfinders, land unit attrition minus 15%. The Arabian path. Desert Sands, hostile attrition plus 0.5. Love that. Merchant Coast, trireme cost minus 50%. Beasts of Burden, camel offense plus 15%. Ships of the Desert, camel, light cav, and heavy cav desert combat bonus 15%. That's a big one. That's across 3 different types of units. Sturdy Design, trireme defense 15% up. Legacy of the Builders, trading camp cost minus 25% cost. I said trading camp cost. Oasis Trade, camel, heavy cav, and light cav cost down 25%, and the finisher bonus of trained cavalry, camel discipline plus 15%. So your camels, your triremes, and your cavalry at large will be very good if you go with the Arabian path. The Egyptian path, the Spear of the Kingdom, light infantry defense up. Arms Race, trireme discipline up. Stone Movers, fort defense up. Colonial integration allows military colonies, which I love. The Blood of Egypt, trireme morale 15%. Thick Hide, camel defense 15%. Cradle of Civilization, that sounds familiar to any EU4 players. National manpower modifier 15%. And the finisher bonus of rank upon rank, light infantry discipline 15%. That feels like it's kind of spread out, but there's definitely a couple of light infantry items in there. And the Greco-Levantine path. Surfight of War. Heavy infantry cost minus 25%. Thorakitai, light infantry offense plus 15%. Machamoi Epilectoi, which I've never heard of before. I don't know what that is. I'm going to have to Google that after the fact to figure out what I'm talking about. Heavy infantry offense plus 15%. Greek Warfare allows the Phalanx. Awesome. Good Reputation. Wow, these seems a little less, I think, like, just Greek Warfare. Good Reputation. They seem a little less pizzazz in there. Not as much panache. Mercenary Maintenance, minus 15%. Ramming Speed, Trireme Offense, plus 15%. Unending Riches, a monthly General Loyalty, 0.02, up. And the finisher bonus of Learning from the Best, Heavy Infantry Discipline, plus 15%. Well, that's it for the day, everybody. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and I will see all of you next time.